taught my dog to talk through buttons, and now I wish I hadn't. I taught my dog to talk, not with her voice, but with her paws. I own a 3-year-old Bicon Frise called Gidget. They are a remarkably intelligent breed despite their yappy image. I taught her from a young age to do tricks and obey commands, and she was a bright and eager student. I always felt she had a lot to say, so when I saw videos on TikTok and Instagram of dogs who used programmed buttons to indicate their needs, I thought I might try it with Gidget. I bought a pack, recorded my voice on the buttons. I kept it simple at first. I gave her buttons to make requests and to ask for things outside, food, water, treat, play. After she had mastered those, I added more. I gave her options about where she wanted to go, what things she wanted to eat. She soon learned to pair the buttons up: outside, park, food, chicken. It was amazing to hear her preferences, to know why she whined or barked. As she grew more confident, I added more buttons. These were more philosophical and used concepts rather than nouns and verbs. I wasn't sure Gidget would be able to understand them, but she picked them up so quickly I wished I had introduced them sooner. We discussed the weather, dreams, emotions. She was soon able to tell me if she was happy or sad, tell me if she'd had a bad dream, and ask for a particular toy for her playtime. I became obsessed. Her little brain was able to express so much more than I'd ever suspected. I added more buttons. Soon she was able to tell me her mood, ask pertinent questions with the why button, make decisions based on what I suggested. She also liked to look out of the window and tell me what she saw. It was so interesting. Whilst I might look out of the window and see my neighbor carrying groceries from his car, Gidget would watch the same scene and tell me about the bird she had spotted or a stray leaf she had seen caught by the wind. I was able to see the world through her eyes. She had been using her buttons to talk for over a year before things started to get disturbing. One day, she stopped playing with her favorite toy, looked in a corner, and walked over to her board. Very deliberately, she selected the button for dark. I laughed. It was daytime and the sunlight was shining into every corner. No dark, I told her. Light. It's daytime. No dark. I used the buttons to reinforce my message. No, dark, light, day. Gidget listened but turned her little head back to the corner. After a few minutes, she came back to her board. Dark, she said again. I'm afraid, I shrugged. Shrugged off her words and the message behind them. I may have even laughed. No dark, I said. Light. Gidget humored me. She was a very clever dog. Sometimes whilst we played, she would stop and examine a random wall, hover by her word board ready to tell me what she saw, but my previous reaction must have discouraged her. Time and again, she would stamp on the button for dark, and I would look at where she looked and deny it. I added more buttons, and with those buttons came more unease. Dark. Stranger. No. Cold. I'd stand where she looked to show her it was okay. She would whine and cry and hit the stranger button. It upset me a lot. After a while, Gidget stopped using her buttons. She regressed. She stopped asking outside and would whine at the door instead. She stopped asking food and would stand by her bowl and cry. I didn't know where I had gone wrong. I stood in the corner she hated more often, trying to understand why she hated it. It was cold there, colder than anywhere else in our home, but very welcoming. I found it soothing for some reason, but the more I stood there, the more she cried. It started to get annoying. It was just a stupid corner. I'm not sure what to do. Update. Gidget has regressed even more. She has started peeing in the house, which is incredibly frustrating. At first I brushed it off, then I took her to the vets. The vet said there was nothing physically wrong with her and she seemed stressed. She's a dog? What has a dog got to be stressed about? I'm getting sick of cleaning up puddles of pee. I feel like I should punish her. Update 2. Gidget won't come near me now. I hold my hand out to coax her. She turns away. Idiot animal. I remember that I loved her once, but that was before I realized how useless she was. She won't even love me, the main reason I got a dog in the first place. I spend more time in my corner and watch the little fluffy beast cringe in her bed. The bed I bought her that she doesn't deserve. I'm watching her now. I've been staring at her for hours now, and she has done nothing except shake and cry. She used her buttons for the first time in ages earlier. Where am Mom? Mom, bye. Stupid creature. Can't she see I'm right here? Or is it too dark? I really like this one. It makes me so sad. Yeah, 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. There's updates. I don't know if I want to read the. Now I have to find a dog. I like the comments. Now I have to find a dog to hug really tight. I have to currently sucking up to mine who's fast asleep. You leave Gidget alone. Glad my pup is sleeping safely next to me. Don't you dare hurt the puppy. This makes you. Please stop it. This right here sums up my entire emotions right now. This is all I feel. This is all I feel. But you notice like the what is it, the owner, the author's feelings, or like what is it, love for the dogs starts to like kind of progressively gets like it disappears more and more as we go down, right? Like as the owner stands in the corner, it gets like they get more and more, what is it, cold towards their pupper. You don't deserve Gidget. I'll take Gidget. You don't. No, I want intelligent pupper. You can go stand in your stupid corner. Nobody's saying you can't stand in your stupid corner. I'm angry sad right now. What's a dog got to be stressed about got me angry? I know. I'm so mad. This is 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I'm so angry right now. Man. Okay. We're fine. Okay, thoughts. Should we read the continuations? Let me see how long it kind of is. There's it's a little. Oh, this is long. Oh, this is not too long. Should we do we want to? Okay, Foss. Thanks, Foss. No worries. I'll check it out at some point soon. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna do a quick poll to ask you guys if you want to read the continuation on this one, because I know I kind of like it, but should we read part 2? Yeah. I'm kind of lost. You're kind of lost? Rain, what are you lost? What's wrong? What can I explain? It's not realistic to me, but the writing and creepiness was amazing, right? Yeah, it's not really realistic. Maybe the dog. No. The owner hasn't died. The owner has. Wait, hold on. I take that back. I'm not sure. The owner has become different. I think that's what we could say for sure. Is that the owner has become different, right? The owner. I think it's because the dog kept saying that there was something wrong with the corner, right? The dog kept pointing at the corner, like what is it? Looking at the corner and feeling like it was dark and cold and scary or something like that, right? But the owner kept standing there trying to figure it out, and as the owner kept standing there, I think that the owner got more and more, like the owner became different. Yeah, we must know what happened to the doggo and the others. Okay, we gotta know what happened to doggo. I am here for the next part of doggo. Okay. Next part, we shall continue the story. I'm the friend of Gidget's mom. You may have read her story. I'm here to update and to ask for advice. My friend isn't in any condition to update her story as far as I can tell. She apparently posted a second update that some of you may have seen, but it was removed shortly after posting. I can only imagine what she wrote in it. If you want to read the original part of her story, it is here. I don't want to use her name, but you will know her as Gidget's mom, so I'll call her GM. As for myself, I am a friend who took Gidget away. GM hadn't checked in with our circle of friends for days when I decided to go see her. We have a group chat we all access daily, but she had been absent from it for too long and hadn't responded to a single message aimed at her. I lived the closest, so I volunteered to go and check up on her. When she answered the door, I was horrified at what I saw. GM is normally a very tidy person who takes great care in her appearance, but when I saw her, she looked terrible. There were vast dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes were covered in stains. She let me in, and as she turned away from me, I noticed that her hair on the back of her head was matted as if she hadn't brushed it for weeks. Even though her curtains were still drawn at 3 p.m., I could see enough in the dim light to ascertain that her home was as messy as she was. There were dirty plates piled up on the floor, stale food congealing on them, and for some reason she had put a blanket over the mirror above her fireplace. What shocked me more was the state of Gidget, though. It was a running joke in our friend group that GM treated Gidget like her baby. Gidget was completely spoiled and pampered with regular visits to groomers and an entire wardrobe of little outfits, but the small white scrap I saw cowering in her filthy bed didn't look like the princess I'd come to know and love. Gidget looked like one of those dogs they used in adverts for animal charities. She was trembling when I saw her, but she still managed to wag her tail, giving me a warmer welcome than GM had given, and she scuttled out of her bed, coming towards me in an awkward, crouching gait I'd never seen her use before. I don't know much about dog body language, but it was clear to me that Gidget was badly frightened of something. Or someone. I didn't like to imagine what had been going on, but judging from GM's appearance and the state of her home and beloved pet, it was an understatement to say that something was terribly wrong. I'm afraid I assumed that GM was depressed. It wasn't something she was prone to my knowledge, but there was a first time for everything. I tried to be as upbeat as possible. I didn't mention how awful GM looked, but I did instinctively start to tidy up a little. I didn't know what else to do. I bustled around her flat, picking things up, recounting such news of our other friends' activities I thought she'd like to hear. GM's silence was unsettling, and being around her made the hairs on my arms prickle. It was ridiculous, but I have to admit that I was scared of her. Something was incredibly off. Not just the mess, or the sour smell, or GM's withdrawal. Not even Gidget's cowed attitude, which I probably could have explained had I not wanted to consider what GM might have put her through. GM has always been, a very sweet person, totally devoted to her dog. I didn't want to think that, in her current state, she might have abused her baby, but I couldn't completely discount it. I felt her behind me as I tidied her kitchen. She stank, a reek like rotten meat, body odor, and old piss. I tried to keep up my chatter so she wouldn't know something was wrong, and for some reason it was very important she didn't know that something was wrong. She was like a dark shadow hanging over me, looming, in fact. At one point I turned and saw a big steak knife laying unattended and put it in the dishwasher just for something to do, so I wouldn't have to make eye contact. Now I was there, I regretted coming. It made me sick to my stomach to be in her presence. The feeling of unease I'd felt upon entering had only gotten worse. I looked around her flat for an excuse to do something else and saw a little puddle on the hardwood floor. It looked very much like Gidget had peed there. I hoped it had been Gidget and not GM. I made my way to the mop, but GM stopped me. She was very distressed, her face right up to mine, and I could smell her breath. It was sweet with rot, thick with something meaty. She told me she didn't want me to do anything else, not with her voice, but with her eyes. And despite the danger I felt coming off her in waves, as strong as her body odor, I couldn't just leave. I told her I wanted to help her, or something like that. I was in no fit state to form a coherent argument. "You can do something for me," she said, and it was then I realized it was the first time she had spoken since I'd entered her flat. Her voice sounded strange, although strange isn't a deep enough word to describe it. It was guttural and thick, as though she was holding phlegm in the back of her throat, and the words were bubbling through. It was the voice an open grave would have if it could speak. The voice of a basement door covered with cobwebs held ajar with a spike of bone as a doorstep. I asked her what she wanted me to do for her, and her eyes flickered then. Maybe it was just the poor lighting, but for a moment it looked as though she had a second set of eyelids beneath her usual ones, like a crocodile, almost transparent but with a smoky glaze to them. One corner of her mouth twitched as if she wanted to smile, but then her face became serious again. Her lips moved without a sound, and now her eyes bulged a little as she huffed rancid breath against my skin. There was a struggling going on inside my friend, and I hoped she was winning. "Take Gidget," she said, coughing the words out as if they hurt her. She was holding my arm so tightly it hurt, pinching the nerve by my elbow until I felt my arm go numb to the shoulder. I can't remember what else was said. All I know is I wanted to leave, and quickly, and I wanted to take Gidget with me. I packed what I could as quickly as I could. The most important things like Gidget's bowls and food and bed and the other usual stuff like her toys and leash and harness, along with some of her cute little coats. I was ready to go when GM, sitting on her couch and watching me with a blank expression, urged me to take Gidget's talking board too. I hadn't even thought of it, but it made sense. I'd always been enthralled by Gidget's board and the way she communicated. It would be fun. I grappled everything into bags, breaking the board down so I could assemble it again at my house, and made my exit. Walking out of the front door made me feel as though I'd escaped, though from what, I couldn't tell you. It was just such a relief. Gidget stopped to look back before the door swung closed behind us, but I didn't. I was focused on getting out. Every step I took to get away from GM was lighter than the one before. I never thought I would shirk my duties to a friend, that I'd be so eager to leave someone in distress, but I knew GM couldn't be talked down and plied with ice cream and chick flicks to get her out of her mood. My shoulder, which had felt many tears upon it over the years, did not want to accommodate GM right now. Gidget relaxed somewhat once she was in my car, but she still looked over her shoulder as I drove away. I couldn't understand her urge to look. Personally, I didn't even want to see that building again. I've read about women who have been kept prisoner in places for years at a time. Colleen Stan, Elizabeth Fritzl, Michelle Knight. It was a fascination of mine. I could only imagine how those women would have felt looking at the houses they'd been kept in after their escape. And I had nothing to compare to their ordeal, but to look back at GM's building was unthinkable. I couldn't do it. Back at my house, I took stock of Gidget's condition properly. She was bedraggled and somehow shrunk into herself, but there was nothing that a bath and a decent meal couldn't sort out. Gidget had been through a tough time, but I couldn't see signs of abuse, only short-term neglect. I bathed her. Oh my goodness. I bathed her, both us getting soaked amongst the bubbles of her shampoo, and toweled her dry in front of my fireplace. She seemed a lot perkier than she had at her own home, and even accepted some of her expensive food, though not as much as I'd hoped. It was probably more for my benefit than hers that I wrapped her in a blanket and cuddled her on my lap, but it did both of us good, and after a couple of hours of snuggles, she was confident enough to wriggle from my grasp and approach the bag that held her board. I dismantled it in a hurry and hadn't reassembled it yet, but she sniffed at the corner of the board sticking out and looked at me expectantly. A very real part of me did not want to put her board together again. I didn't want to know what she wanted to tell me, but the little frill of her tail twitched and her fluffy cheeks puffed out to express a single, polite woof. I couldn't deny her. I laid the board out, clicking the panels into place, and repositioned any loose buttons before returning to my chair and turning on the TV. Gidget stood by her board for a while, considering her options, and I half watched her, hoping she would only ask for a treat. But Gidget had more serious stuff in mind. "Mom, gone." She pressed the buttons with her little paw, then gazed at me, trying to ascertain whether I'd registered her comment. I smiled a false smile that hurt my face and replied too brightly, "Yes, Mom gone, at Auntie X's house now." I didn't know it was possible for a dog to look frustrated, but she was patient with me. She examined her board again, thinking, then selected some more buttons. "Mom, dark, stranger, gone." I felt hot, like Gidget's words had turned the fire up a notch. I pretended I hadn't heard the buttons and concentrated on the voice, the one on TV, not the one asking to get into my head. "Stranger." Gidget didn't just press the button, she stamped on it, emitting a little aggravated snort. "Dark, stranger, Mom. Bye, Mom." A glance at me then. "Help, Mom. Bye, stranger." I pretended I didn't know what she meant. I laughed, a sound that was jagged and false. "Bedtime now," I told her, turning off the TV. "Do you want to sleep with Auntie X?" Gidget regarded me for a long time, then appeared to give the dog version of a shrug. She sighed and plodded towards my bedroom, not looking at me. I'd let her down, but it appeared Gidget was a lot braver than I am. I didn't sleep well. Gidget's warm little body was a comfort next to me, but my dreams were full of troubling, indistinct images. I tossed and turned all night, waking often, and every time I woke, I would stare at the vague rectangle of my bedroom door, expecting it to be open. I dreamed that someone was leaning over me, someone with negative intent, someone with breath that was scalding hot yet made frost form on my face. More than once, I woke up to find out I had pulled either the covers or my own pillow over my head, as though I was hiding from something. My sleep that night was ragged and sparse, and when the sun finally rose, I was wearier than when I'd gone to bed. I didn't want to experience a night like that again. I made coffee in the gray pre-dawn light. I didn't even think about going back to bed. Gidget joined me, looking as tired as I felt. Her perfect little white curls were scruffy and flat, her ears droopy. She didn't look at me for comfort as I looked at her, but went straight to her board and yawned before pressing her buttons. Help! Mom! Bye, stranger! She flopped down onto the floor by her board, exhausted. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have the energy. I sat down with my coffee and stared at the blank TV. I thought that I should call some of our friends, but it was far too early. Everyone would be asleep. Everyone except whoever it was ringing my doorbell. I thought it might be the postman, though he had never called so early. Barely awake, I put my cup down and heaved myself out of my chair. Gidget was up and alert all of a sudden, staring at the door, her little body rigid with a slight tremor running down her spine. No, she stepped on the button as I walked towards the door. It's okay, Gidget, I told her, still sleepy. Auntie X get door. No, 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 no. She pummeled it repeatedly, ears flapping as she bounced. Stranger, no. I looked through the spy hole in my door. It gave me a fisheye lens view of everything outside. Someone was standing slightly to the left of my door, just out of sight. I lifted my head to release the deadbolt, and again Gidget stamped on the no button. The imperative voice behind the robotic voice made me pause. It was a recorded version of GM's voice, made unnatural by the repetition, and the more Gidget stamped on it, the more desperate it sounded. I squinted through the peephole again. I could see a shoulder and most of an arm. Who is it? I asked. Never had I asked for identification before. The figure on my step moved, came into view. It was GM, looking as scruffy as she had before. She was smiling, an expression that looked strange on her crusty face, and one arm was behind her back. The other arm reached up, the attached hand ringing the doorbell again. It's me, X, she said, sounding exactly how she should, her voice normal now. I'm feeling better. I've come to get Gidget. It should have been a relief. GM sounded fine, and I was already exhausted from looking after Gidget. But I did take my hand down from the deadbolt. Gidget was frantic now, pouncing on her buttons just out of my line of vision. GM's metallic voice spoke to me over and over. No, stranger, no, Mom, stranger, dark, no. I sighed, put my head against the cool wood of my front door. I can't let you in, GM, I said. I don't know why, but I can't. Something thumped against the outside of the door, right where my head was placed. I moved, then stepped away, just a split second before the point of a knife appeared, piercing the wood. I stared at it without comprehension and watched as it disappeared again. Open the door, X, said the voice from the other side. No. I couldn't tell if it was me or the voice from Gidget's board who spoke, but it didn't matter. The thing on my porch screamed, and I heard rapid footsteps. When I looked outside again, GM was gone. Swaying on my feet, I wondered if I had locked the back door before going to bed last night. I usually did. I'm hoping I did. But I did hear a weird squeal just now that sounded like the old hinges on my back door opening. It might just be my imagination. But for now, I am crouched in my bedroom, Gidget close by my knee, and her entire attention is trained on my bedroom door. I feel like I should call the police, but I also feel like writing this down is more important. Strange. I can hear noises in my house. What should I do? I mean, it's only my friend out there, if anything. Okay. Listen. I'm gonna read the comments to not deal with how I feel right now. Listen to Gidget, your friend needs an exorcism. You better keep Gidget safe. Get out of there. Drive a couple towns over or something. This is... I don't know what it is, guys. My Reddit greater than police. 10 out of 10. No. That arm behind her back is definitely holding a knife, right? Definitely. No, open, no, open, no, open, no, open, no, open. Oh, wait, no. Is that nope? Nope. 10 out of 10. Better call Ghostbusters. Wow, 10 out of 10. Isn't this good? This is so good. We should have started with this. It's okay. We started with something to whet our appetite in the best way possible. It's okay. Oh my god, this is so good. There's more though. Oh my gosh, sorry. I poked myself by accident. That hurt. Sorry. There's more. Should we read part 3 and part 4. This is so good. This is so good. Oh, this is so good. Should we read more? More? Okay, I need to end this poll and start another one. End a poll. This guy needs a budget to make a short film, right? What is it? Gidget part 3. You know what I'll do after this stream, and I know, sorry if I stutter a little while reading. I'm reading all of these for the first time, so, and I can't re-record stuff obviously, but I was thinking what I'll do is I'll put chapters for this stream and last stream, so if you guys want to re-listen to it for creepy fun, I'll put the links there so you can like skip to it next time. The story is really good, right? Don't show this to Netflix. Oh, no, guys, this is just so good. I kind of want to clip this and make it its own little little video on this channel, so that, and then link back to the author and put it there. I feel like this one is so good. I love it so much so far. I guess this could be for the most read. This one was good to start with, right? Spooky short. Yeah, this one is good. This one is really good. Okay, I'll give it a couple seconds for you guys to tell me if you want part 3, and I'll drink water while I do this. Rose should act this? Am I acting? No, what? Am I not? What? I see 100% yes right now. Come on, guys, 11? I know there's like 3 times as many of you here. What do we want to do? What do we want to do? I'll give it a few more seconds. Yeah, drink your water. Drink your water. Okay, I'm gonna talk about something really, really random and unrelated while I wait for your votes really quick. I got a new toothpaste, okay? This is going somewhere. Listen. I got a new toothpaste. I went to the store. So usually with toothpaste, I usually just use whatever my parents get at Fairy Costco. My parents just get like a pack of toothpaste at Fairy Costco. I just use that, right? But for the first time in a while, I forgot to bring toothpaste from the fairy world. And I know you might be like, Ro, why do you need to bring toothpaste from the fairy world? I don't, but it's like we have it anyway, and like I might as well just bring it with me so I don't have to go buy toothpaste. It's like one little box of toothpaste, right? So I forgot to bring toothpaste this time. And so I was like, oh frick, I have to go to the store and get toothpaste. So I went to the store, and the toothpaste was behind a bunch of like lock boxes because they don't want people stealing toothpaste. So I looked at the toothpaste and I'll just grab one. I asked the attendant, could you please open the lock box so I can grab some toothpaste? And when they opened it, I suddenly was like, oh my gosh, wait, which one am I supposed to pick? And so I looked at the guy, and he looked at me. I looked at the guy, and I was like, what toothpaste do you recommend? And he just looked at me for a second, and he was like, and he just started laughing so hard. And he was like, what do you usually use? And I had this moment where I kind of blanked out in that moment because I was totally getting laughed at. I was like, I don't remember. I just use whatever my parents have. I don't remember. And he just looks at me like I'm the wrong age. And then I'm like, he probably thought I was like a freshman just starting college and like independent for the first time in my life. I was just like, and he was like, no, just pick one. They're all the same. So I picked one. But I picked this tiny one, and it was good, but it was expensive. And that's the end of that little part of the story. But wait, there's more. So then the other day I went to the store, and I was like, no, this time I'm not gonna, I ran out of my tiny little toothpaste. The big version of it is kind of expensive. So I was like, okay, I'll just get whatever's cheap at the store. So I got this cheap toothpaste, and I came home, and the point of this entire story is to say that my cheap toothpaste that I picked randomly makes me, I don't know what it is, but I think it makes me nauseous because it tastes really funny. It tastes really funny. And like, it also didn't have, like, they have like the tamper little cap on it where like it has like a little seal on it to prevent tampering. It didn't have that. But I was like, it's probably fine. Like I was like, and it just makes me nauseous whenever I use, and so I was like, I need to get new toothpaste. Okay, that is all. That is my story. Thank you for listening. I'll end the poll now. That was my story. That was all. That was all. My story was I got laughed at while getting toothpaste once, and then the other day when I got toothpaste, I got a toothpaste that makes me nauseous. That is it. That is all. That is my story. I'm a fairy adult who struggles with human toothpaste, okay? It doesn't mix with me. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue the story. I hope you like the little side advertisement, just a side story right now. So I am half in a mood to toss this. I don't really like waste stuff, but I feel like I need to toss this toothpaste and get a new toothpaste because I don't like the taste of this toothpaste. I don't know what it is. Every time I brush my teeth, it like makes me feel sick. Like after I'm fine for like an hour, like after I brush my teeth, but for like rest of the day, like I start to feel like nauseous, and I think it's because of toothpaste. That is all. Okay, so part 3. It seems like we want part 3, so I shall continue to read part 3. Okay. If you know about Gidget, you might want to read this. If you're not caught up, I suggest you follow the link. It hurts to write this. Let me restart now that the guys outside are done joyriding. If you know about Gidget, you might want to read this. If you're not caught up, I suggest you follow the link. It hurts to write this, not just physically, but that too. I'm covered in bruises, and there may be some cuts too, but I'm alive. And so is Gidget. I know most of you are more worried about Gidget. This may take more than one update. I have a lot to process, plus I am in hospital, so I beg for your patience. After my last post, I did the sensible thing. I called the police. I sat hunched in my own bedroom with furniture in front of the door and my friend's dog huddled by me and called the police. I stayed where I was, on the phone to the woman on dispatch, and listened to the police tear through my house. There was no dramatic gunfights. I live in England, after all, but there were some impressive-sounding footfalls pounding around. It seemed to take hours before they called all clear, but after looking at my phone, I realized it had only been 10 minutes. I came out of hiding then, clutching Gidget to my side. She was very happy to see the police officers and even licked a couple of them. My back door was intact, the lock still in place, and they had gained entry through my front door, they told me. That didn't seem right to me, but I was very tired and I thought that maybe I hadn't locked my front door after all. My front door at all. Which gives me the shivers, knowing GM could have burst through any time she wanted. They took my statement and a description of GM and asked me if I had a friend or family member I could stay with. It was heavily implied that they recommended I don't stay at my house, and I agreed. But although I did have places I could stay, GM knew most of the addresses. Maybe all of them. We were a tight-knit group and many of my friends were her friends, so I decided to stay at a motel. I packed the basics for me and again, within hours, was packing Gidget's stuff. I made sure to pack her board. Gidget knew a lot more than I did. The place I had chosen was comfortable and anonymous. The decor was exactly what I would have expected, neutral and inoffensive, and Gidget had her own bed. She settled down quickly, not even glancing at her board, and fell asleep within minutes of our arrival. I lay awake a lot longer, listening to Gidget's high-pitched snores and trying to process everything that had happened. I should have assumed that GM had had some kind of breakdown, but my instincts told me otherwise. The sensations surrounding her were far more complex and didn't feel natural at all. GM was my friend, and I felt like I could have accepted a psychological break far more easily than what I'd felt. I'd felt evil when all was said and done, a separate entity from my good friend that would only be happy with my death. I tossed and turned, but eventually fell asleep to troubled dreams. My dreams did not reflect what I'd gone through. Rather, they were far more mundane and irritating. I was late for an important meeting and I was wearing inappropriate clothes. My car wouldn't start and I tried to walk to the meeting, but I got lost along the way. It was a dream I'd had many times before, but this time, amongst the dullness of it all, little things crept in that I wasn't used to. Whilst I struggled to get my car started, there was a figure, barely registered in the background, hanging from a tree. And whilst I walked along a muddy road in heels and my old PE kit, someone was following me and always ducking out of sight when I turned around. I didn't sleep well, but when I woke up as the newly gray dawn filtered through the curtains, Gidget was still asleep, and I counted that as a positive thing. I let her sleep. I'd laid her food and water bowls down where she could easily find them, and assembled her word board should she feel the need to communicate, so there wasn't much else I could do for a sleeping dog. With nothing else to do myself, I opened my phone and started scrolling. There was a message bubble from Facebook Messenger hovering on my screen. GM's face was in the bubble. I ignored it, although pulling down the notifications at the top of my phone screen told me that she had sent me a disturbingly garbled message I couldn't translate. WhatsApp had a new message for me, but a quick glance told me it was also GM. Again, a first glance showed only disturbing nonsense. I swiped that notification away too. I was still tired and did not want to be reminded about GM. Another message awaited me on Instagram. I checked all my apps. LinkedIn and TikTok and YouTube also had messages for me. My new Reddit account had similar notifications. Even my bank app had a fresh message I did not want to read, and whilst it was impossible for GM to access my bank app or leave me a message, it was indeed from her, or whatever was inside her. Everywhere I went, GM was waiting for me. I opened Google. I'm not sure what I was going to search for, but whatever it was left my mind when I saw the Google logo. I know Google changes the logo to a picture for special occasions, but I couldn't imagine what the occasion could be that would require a grainy, partially animated photo of a door. It was in black and white, flickering slightly, and looked all too familiar. For a second, I thought it might be the door to the motel room I was staring at, but somehow it was almost worse when I recognized it as the door to my bedroom where I was barricaded last night. The thought that GM had been outside my door whilst I was on the phone to the police and had possibly taken a photo of my door while she was at it, that was disturbing. I closed my Google app without searching for anything. I didn't want to know what might come up in the results. Gidget and I remained in the motel for nearly a week. The police told me they had done a welfare check on GM and hadn't been able to locate her. There was no sign that she had returned to my house either, but I couldn't bring myself to go home. I felt reasonably safe where I was, but knew I couldn't stay there indefinitely. I was low on funds and my sick time at work was running out. Besides, the more material reasons, being there made me feel like I was on the run. Paranoid, scared all the time, twitchy and anxious. I couldn't live like that, and that bad dreams had not left me. They were normal dreams I was used to having, dreams I had often in various shapes and forms, ones that were apparently common if online dream dictionaries are to be believed. But there was a darker tinge to each of them that made everything worse. If I dreamed about my teeth falling out, there would be a hand stained red extended, ready to receive them. If I dreamed about being back at school, there was always something underneath my desk or in my locker I didn't dare look at. And if I dreamed about falling, there was always something dreadful waiting for me when I reached the end of my fall. And in every dream, a shadowy figure lurked in the background, never acknowledged, but always noticed. I'd really done nothing to deal with the situation I was in, just survived. Gidget had tried her best to explain to me what had happened, but her buttons were very limited. All I could ascertain was that something was dark and GM was now a stranger. I ventured onto the internet again. Messages still waited for me, but the Google logo had returned to normal, which was a comfort. There were many things I could have looked up, but the one I chose to do was find out where Gidget's buttons had come from and order some more. I'm not sure why I did this, but I had a few ideas I wanted to try out. The new buttons arrived quickly, and I agonized over what I would record. How could I ask a dog to express something I didn't understand myself? I allowed myself a little indulgence. I knew what I suspected based on my own feelings around when I'd gone to GM's home, but I didn't know how to translate that into something Gidget could relate to. I started slowly. Recorded my voice onto the new buttons. It made me terrified, but I did it anyway. Gidget's name and Mom were already there, so I recorded my name on one button. Then I recorded a couple more options. Gidget is such a clever dog. I don't think that we, as humans, really appreciate the level of intelligence a dog can have. Or the level of intellect a dog can have. GM had told me about Gidget's understanding of dreams, but I don't think I really acknowledged that such an abstract thought could be expressed by a little scrap of white fur. And the things I wanted to discuss were such odd concepts. I taught her dog and human. It might seem strange that those were the words I chose to record, but bear with me. Gidget, dog, X, human, GM, human. I knew she had some dog friends she associated with, so I used their names to reinforce what I had showed her. Sparky, I said and hit the dog button. Rebel, I said and hit the dog button. Once she'd gotten the hang of that, I tried the human version. I named all the people she might know and hit the human button after each one. She watched me closely, absorbing everything, and it wasn't long before she could answer questions with her two new buttons. I named everyone she knew, dog or human, and she answered appropriately, working out that dogs and humans were different. I gave her a treat every time she was correct, and it was every single time. Except when I mentioned GM. But she didn't press the human button when I said GM's name, or said Mom. She had no buttons to press for her. GM was apparently not human or a dog. I thought again for a long time before I could record another button. I made a button for animal. I wanted to be sure Gidget understood that whilst we were all animals, not all animals were dog or human. She knew cats, of course, having been friends with the local cat, but she also knew cows and horses from her walks. Still, she could tell me that Benjamin, a human, was human, that Misty, a cat, was animal, that General, a horse, was animal. But when I said GM's name or Mum again, she did not respond for a long time until she finally seemed to get frustrated with me, and the final time I mentioned GM, Gidget stamped on her board. Stranger, dark, Mum, bye. I knew what she was talking about. That was the worst thing. I knew when I was with GM, she wasn't GM, and it wasn't just a dissociative episode. GM wasn't GM. She was something else, and from what Gidget had told me, it had to do with something dark in their home. Looking back to when I had taken Gidget away, there was a corner of a room in GM's that I hadn't liked. There was no reason for me to dislike it. It looked no different, but there had been a puddle on the floor near that corner I thought might be Gidget's pee, and I was going to clean it. But GM had stopped me. She did not want me near that corner. And to be honest, I didn't want to go near that corner either, though I couldn't tell you why. It was a relief when she had stopped me. I think whatever had happened to GM had something to do with that corner, and it was why Gidget didn't think of her as human. So I thought again, wrestled with my thoughts actually. How could I allow Gidget to express herself? I was still pondering over how I could help Gidget help me with Gidget's demeanor. I was still pondering over how I could help Gidget help me when Gidget's demeanor changed. She went stiff, digging her little paws into the motel room carpet and cocked her head as if listening to something I couldn't hear. She growled once, a tiny sound almost buried deep in her throat, and looked over my shoulder. I felt paralyzed. All the fear I'd been experiencing in the past days suddenly brought to head. Stiff, Gidget did a strutty little walk over to her board and, looking over her shoulder the whole time, stamped on her buttons. Stranger, Mum. She hesitated, considered all her buttons. I don't think the word she needed was there, so she tried to adapt. Home, she said. Home? Who's home? Was GM at my house again? Where, Mum? I asked, my tongue almost glued to the roof of my mouth. It felt as though all my saliva had evaporated. Gidget looked over my shoulder again and gave a little shudder. Home, she said, pressing the button with a stiff paw. And then I remembered. GM's world had revolved around Gidget, and she had a little saying I had heard more than once. Home is where Gidget is, GM would say as she snuggled her dog. Gidget was here, so maybe this was home, and maybe GM was here. I have to stop now. I'm sorry to leave you all hanging, but I will update as soon as I can. I have statements to give to the police and medical attention to receive, so hang tight. I will be back to tell you the rest. Somehow this keeps getting creepier. This keeps getting scarier. Like somehow it's scary. Oh my gosh. Holy crap. I want to go check my door to make sure it's like double locked. Is that weird? Will you guys judge me if I do that? You know what? Judge me away. I'm fairy. I'm not human. Blame it on my fairiness. I'm gonna go double lock my door. Be right back. I double locked my door. Like, what is it, the little deadbolt? Because my roommate was saying, like, our you know, like, yeah, our door isn't fully secure if you don't double bolt it. And I was like, you know what? We usually have it double bolted when we're here, but like when we leave, obviously we don't double bolt it from outside. And she stepped out, so I had to go double bolt it. I was like, no. Gonna go lock that door. This is why, okay, this is like another side thing, but there's a reason why I will never ever live on the first floor of like an apartment. I don't know what it is, but like the first floor always scares me. It's not just the bugs, but there's something about it being too close to the like ground floor and like the windows being too close to human height level that it just scares me. It just scares me. Yeah. I'm not even gonna ask this time. We're just gonna read the next part. There's no question. It is happening. It is happening. I'm reading the next part. Okay, final update about Gidget. Oh my gosh. Okay. Did you put chair in front of the door? No, my roommate still needs to come back home. Your voice is so fitting for the creepy storytelling, is it, Luke? Thank you. Like, I'm getting scared as I'm reading and trying not to like have my voice shake too much while oh, doggy has 300 EQ. That's Azure. Doggy is genius. See, this is why dogs are bestest. I love the doggo. Love the puppers. They're the bestest. Oh my gosh, guys, this is breakfast laughs in no door. Sir, you do not have a door? Oh no. Oh no. Karma's like, nope. What's the rating so far, guys? What's the rating for this section? What's the rating so far? What are we feeling? 11 out of 10. Doggo knows what's up. Yes, this is so good, isn't it? Oh my gosh, guys, this is wild. Stranger, dark, mom, bye. No. Mommy, mom. Oh, I want to go see. I need to call my mom. Mom, I'm scared. 100 out of 10. 10. 9 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Ah, this is so good. Castle straight up leave you to die. That is so true. Castle be like, yeet. Row, and then they'll just leave. Doggo will protect. Doggo will stay with you. Even if the doggo hides behind you, the doggo will stay with you. Stranger, very cute. Roll. Does me? Yeah, I'm fairy. I'm as me? Yeah, that's me. Oh, guys, I'm legit. I'm just out. Kawaii. I like my hair started rising as I was reading. Like my what is it? Like the torihada nandakke? What is that in English? Oh my gosh, why is that English? Hold on. What word am I thinking of? Like my goosebumps. I started getting goosebumps as I was reading. I was like, oh, and then like I was hearing the sound of the heater and I got like kind of stressed for a second. Easy, 10 out of 10. Okay, I think it's time to read the next part. Time to read the next part. I need some water. I'm glad I have hot water. The hot water warms me up inside. Okay. Oh wait, this is the one we just read. Okay. This is my final update about Gidget. Okay, so if you haven't read the rest of this, I suggest you go right back to the beginning so it'll all make sense. I'm sorry for the delay. Things have been hectic. So many things have happened and I'm trying to get everything into order, an order that will make sense. So buckle up. This is going to be a long one. I didn't know whether to run or hide when Gidget told me by association that GM was nearby. I was absolutely terrified and my main thought was to protect Gidget. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pack, but luckily I hadn't brought much with me and hadn't unpacked much when we had arrived. I had chosen flight over fight, and while running away wouldn't solve things, I didn't know what else to do. I packed Gidget's board, including the new buttons, and hefted my bag and Gidget at the same time. She was shaking and evidently terrified, but she was stronger than me. Despite her trembling, she didn't cower into me. She braced her paws against my shoulders where I'd slung her and lifted her head, chin high, to face whatever might be creeping up on us. Gidget is a ride-or-die kind of dog. I could feel that GM was close. Whether that was some kind of sixth sense or just my faith in Gidget's senses still isn't clear to me, but I ran. packed up my car and strapped us both in. I felt sick to my stomach. I had an image in my head of GM, filthy and murderous, lurching towards our location, a knife held at her side. She had been searching all week, and now she had found us. I drove without any destination in mind, and the further we got from the motel, the more Gidget relaxed. She didn't sleep once the danger was over, merely lay down on her seat, eyes open, and stared at me. But the tension had gone from her body, and that had to mean something. I was still scared, though. I felt as though GM was still hunting us, following the trail of our souls like some kind of psychic bloodhound. And I knew me and Gidget couldn't last on the road. One can't run forever. I found a new motel and checked in. I didn't want to think about it, was tired of thinking about it, but I knew whatever I had to do had to be resolved quickly. I settled us in, laid out Gidget's board, and returned to Google. I had given up of trying to explain everything logically. I had never considered being in this type of situation, and I was running out of sensible options, so I followed my instincts and searched demonic possession. It felt strange to do so, and I wanted to deny that it could be real, but I did it anyway. My decision was partially influenced by the appearance of a new Google logo that merely consisted of the words, "Open the door," spelled out in black letters against a foggy background. It was disturbing to see, but at this point, I was very nearly done with the whole thing. I was exhausted and hungry and scared, but seeing GM's obvious message just made me roll my eyes. Whatever was in GM was too slow and very repetitive. After an hour or so of reading, I did another quick Google search and found some shops within driving distance that might have the things I need. I had driven too far for GM to be able to catch up with us quickly, so I wasn't too concerned about Gidget's safety, but I was concerned about her mental state. I explained to her that I was going to go out for a while and that I wouldn't be very long. I might have found it strange once upon a time to be conversing so earnestly with a dog, but Gidget had shown me how much she was capable of understanding. She listened carefully to my words, yawned, licked my hand, then fell asleep. That was as good as any indication that she was safe. I trusted her instincts. I bought the crucifixes at the religious supply shop. I had no idea that such stores existed, and the fact that one should be so close to where I was staying made me decide it was some kind of omen. I got a big crucifix made of wood with a realistic Jesus carved on it. Someone had put far too much effort into chiseling abs onto him. I also got 2 silver crucifix necklaces, a larger one for me, and a small one I could attach to Gidget's collar. I bought a Bible too, just in case it came in handy. I felt like I was stocking up for a vampire attack. At that point, I wouldn't have been surprised if the shop had also sold pre-sharpened steaks. My next stop was a place that sold herbs. I bought a bunch of white sage that I wasn't sure what I was going to do with, but which had seemed important according to what I'd read online. On the way home, I stopped at a church along the way. I had a large water bottle in the car which was nearly empty, so I drank the contents and went into the church. The font was by the door. So was the priest. I wasn't sure what to say to him, but I held up my water bottle and asked if I could fill it. I had thought I might have to be sneaky or come up with a valid excuse, but he waved me in without comment or judgment. He watched me as I held the neck of the bottle underwater. "House haunted?" he asked with half a smile. "Friend possessed," I said, and we both laughed. I could have asked him for help, I suppose, but it all seemed so fantastical it didn't occur to me. I should really have asked him for help. Instead, I went back to the motel and Gidget. Gidget was still asleep, and whilst I didn't want to wake her, I did want to make sure she was protected. The first thing I did was slide the small crucifix off its chain and clip it to her collar, right next to the tag with her name on it. She wagged her tail at me. I hoped it would be enough for now. The second thing I did was use the holy water. I wasn't sure where to use it. I had thought about the motel doorways, but I couldn't be certain how many ways in there were. So I settled for pouring a line across the doorway of our room and splashing the door and door handle liberally on both sides. I did glance at the window too, but we were on the 3rd floor, so I didn't think it would be a problem. There was quite a lot of the holy water left, so I put it on my bedside cabinet and made a mental note to remind myself not to drink it. After that, there was not much else to do. I fed Gidget, ate something myself, which was difficult with the way my stomach was curdling, and lay down on the bed. Gidget did not have her own bed this time, so she climbed up with me, and it was unspeakably comforting to have her warm, fuzzy body nestled next to me. I decided when all this was over, I would get a dog of my own. I hadn't intended to fall asleep, but the stress must have shut my body down because the next thing I knew, it was dark, and I wasn't in my bed. Instead, I appeared to be floating high above an unfamiliar road, and after the initial panic, I realized I must be dreaming and forced myself to relax. The road was mostly empty, a few cars parked along the curbs, and streetlights dotted lining it. Nothing to catch the attention apart from a lone figure toiling along. Even from a distance, the figure looked familiar, and the recognition seemed to be responsible for me drifting down and drawing closer. It was GM, still dressed in her stained sweats, her hair even more matted than when I had seen her before. She was walking with an uneven but somehow inexorable stride, rolling from side to side, yet making good speed. One hand was swinging next to her, fingers curled into a loose fist. The other was deep in the pouch of her hoodie. With the curious knowledge of dreams, I felt like I knew what she was clutching in there, and that it was for me. I shouldn't have been able to hear her from that height, but I could. She was panting and muttering in a low voice, and although I could not make out any real words, she sounded angry, and her voice sounded a lot deeper than it had before. I didn't want to go any closer. I felt like if I did, she would sense my presence like Sauron when Frodo put the ring on, but my curiosity got the better of me. It was a dream, I reasoned. Scary, yes, but still a dream. So I went down until I was just ahead of her, seemingly hovering a few feet above the ground. A car drove past us without even slowing, which cemented the idea that I could not be seen. GM was twitching her head as she walked, abrupt little jerks that made her face blur, and something about the way that happened made me extremely uneasy. I wanted to see her face. I felt like if I could, it would give me more of an idea of her mental state. As she grew closer to where I floated, she faltered, feet stumbling ever so slightly. Did she sense that I was there? I could now see in the false yellow light of the street lamps that her shoes were stained dark, and I was horrified when I realized that she had walked so far that her feet were bleeding. GM started forward again with even more urgency than before. Her hand was coming out of her pocket and I saw a dull gleam. She was coming towards me. She could see me. I panicked, willing myself to fly up to where I had been before, but whether my fear was keeping me there, a rabbit in the headlights, or GM was holding me down somehow, I couldn't be sure. I could see her face as the headlights of another passing car illuminated it, the glint of her eyes. They weren't completely black like I had somehow expected, just her normal eyes, but somehow they still managed to convey utter madness. "You!" she crowed, and whatever was in her hand sliced the fabric of her hoodie as it came free, and it wasn't until she was right on top of me that I managed to break the hold gravity had over me. I shot upward with sickening speed, heading for the stars, but not before one of her hands brushed my foot, going straight through it. I woke up in the motel room, my heart hammering away against my ribs, my breath scorching my throat. When I'd fallen asleep, Gidget had been nestled in the crook of my arm, but now I was hugging her close and she was whining, tongue flicking at my face. It had to have been just a dream, I told myself. But even if it had been, it was one I never wanted to have again. It had been creepy enough, but the worst part was when GM had touched my foot at the very end. She hadn't made purchase, as I was just in my dream body, but it was still long enough to transfer everything that was happening inside her. And there was a lot going on. I felt her pain first. She had indeed bled through her shoes and was walking in a jellied layer of it, grinding on the small bones that, from the loose way they floated, felt like they could have broken. The tendons and muscles in her legs were surely torn, and it felt like she had a permanent cramp. She was starving too, and thirsty. The thing controlling her hadn't let her eat or drink. It didn't care about her. She was just a vessel, and it would push her for as far as it wanted until she was dead. Maybe then it would vacate the lifeless meat of her body. The second thing I felt was the entity itself. It was angry. But it also felt like anger and hate were the only things it ever felt, a constant state of being. I saw in whatever passed for its mind what it intended to do to me and Gidget, and that there would be no mercy, no hesitation, and we had done nothing to deserve it except escape. I was glad I had only felt it for a split second. Had I felt its emotions for a longer period, I think I would have gone insane. It was a miracle GM had held out for so long. But horrible as the pain and the entity's spite had felt, the third thing I had sensed before quitting the scene was somehow far, Worse, I had felt GM herself, a scratchy little scream buried deep down inside the whole mess. I don't know if it was her consciousness or if it could truly be her soul, but I could hear her shrieking as if she were at the end of a very long tunnel, muffled but not robbed of any of its horror for all that. I didn't know if GM could ever come back from that place, physically or mentally. Even if the entity was driven out, her physical body had sustained so much abuse from the inhuman puppeteer commanding it that I felt sure her internal organs would be shutting down. And her mind? I thought it might be completely broken. I hugged Gidget tight. There would be no more running. It had to end. The showdown came a day later. The entity must have pushed GM's body to unnatural limits in order to get to where we were so soon, but I was glad in a way when it finally arrived. I had been scared for too long, and Gidget had been even more anxious the closer it got. The tension had been unbearable. Gidget alerted me to our visitor around 3 a.m. Neither of us had been able to sleep, and Gidget had been pacing up and down, but she stopped in her tracks, the fuzzy fur on the back of her neck standing up, and stalked over to her board. "Mom, home," she said. I wasn't at all surprised. There was a chair in the room I had wedged against the already locked motel room door, but now I retrieved it and turned it to face the entrance. I sat down, Gidget at my feet, the Bible on my lap, the big wooden crucifix clutched in both hands, and waited. It didn't take long for me to pick up on the presence of the thing inside GM. Gidget had felt it sooner because her senses were more attuned, but there was no mistaking the dread rising up in my belly. It tasted like bile, and I felt like I would vomit. There was a smell that might have been real, might have been in my mind, but it was strong and foul. I kept my eyes fixed on the door. Would I open it when it knocked? That was the whole point after all. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, over and over, notification after notification, until the vibrations carried it over the edge onto the floor, where it continued to report. I didn't need to read the messages to know what they said. It wanted me to open the door. There was a little time left. "Get on the bed, Gidget," I told her. The bed was further away from the door, and I didn't want her to be the first thing GM saw. Gidget whined and remained where she was. "I mean it, Gidget. Good girl. Go and get on the bed. I'll deal with Mom." She complied with obvious reluctance. She looked so small on that big bed, I thought, as I looked back over my shoulder at her. Just a tiny little floof, a ball of yarn. I smiled at her. I was still smiling when the shadow appeared in the window by the bed. We were on the 3rd floor. The window shouldn't have been a problem. I had checked, you see, checked for drain pipes or fire escapes or anything like that, and it was just a wall all the way up to our window, but it didn't seem to have stopped GM. She had somehow climbed up there, and she hung, framed in the window, grinning in at us. I saw her very clearly before the light went out and the window broke. She had lost so much weight, it didn't seem possible, and her skin hung on her bones. Two of her front teeth were broken, and the jagged edges gnashed at her bottom lip as she smiled. One bloody hand lifted in a wave, so she was hanging onto the windowsill with the other. Her nails were missing, no doubt from her impossible climb, and the spongy fingertips touched the window, daubing a crooked smiley face on the glass. The light went out then, just as her hand was doubling into a fist and drawing back, and I got out of my chair so quickly it toppled, the Bible falling from my lap. The crash seemed deafening in the small space. I could see very little, the only light coming from a distant street lamp, but it was enough to see the hunched shadow that had once been my friend launch itself through the window. The broken glass still in the window frame had formed long spears that didn't deter her, but they did slow her down. She was reaching for Gidget with frantic, grabby hands, but the glass pierced her and held her in place like a beetle on a pin. I didn't have time to process what was happening or to make an informed plan of action, but I did the only thing I could. I hadn't been sure when I bought it what use the crucifix would be, but it turned out it was very useful indeed at knocking GM right the fuck out. Gidget hadn't moved. As tiny as she was, she had faced the threat with the spirit of a Caucasian mastiff, and even when GM was still, she didn't let her guard down. GM's hands had just about bridged the gap between the window and the bed, leaving bloody handprints on the covers, but now they dropped onto the floor. She hung over the sill, hair dangling, arms limp, and I didn't know what to do. I'll be honest, I thought about hitting her again, hitting her as many times as it needed to finally set her free, but she had once been my friend, and more practically, my knowledge of the law was sketchy when it came to bludgeoning intruders to death. So I called the police instead and took a look at what I had to hand. I doused her with holy water first. Her body twitched at that, and she let out a feeble cry, trying to lift her head. My instinct to help her was up strong, but she sounded so pathetic, but I wasn't going to get much closer than I already was. I remembered the sage too, in the long, stretching minutes before I could hear the approaching sirens in the distance, and thought I might as well use it as it was there. I lit it, and it produced a thick plume of smoke that almost immediately set off the smoke alarm. But I tried to ignore the piercing beeps and reached out at arm's length to waft the smoke towards GM. It drifted in lazy curls, apparently not aware of the urgency, and I watched it, mesmerized. It wanted to go straight out the window, so I bent and swished the glowing bundle closer. The smoke swirled and settled around GM's head. She reacted again then, lifting her head and fixing me with a furious gaze. Her eyes were bulging so much I didn't think she could actually close the lids, and there was blood that looked black in the half-light pouring from her mouth. One of her hands snatched up from the floor and managed to snag my ankle, pulling me over. There was broken glass everywhere, and I only dimly felt the shards scraping my back as she started to drag me towards her with strength that was ridiculous considering her condition. I screamed for help, hoping someone was near enough to come to my aid, and tried to grab at the big crucifix which I had put down to attend to the saging, but it was just out of reach. I kicked at her face, feeling the crunch as a couple of more of her teeth shattered, but she spat blood at me and carried on pulling. It was Gidget that managed to stop her. The tiny dog hurled herself from the bed, ears flying, small teeth snapping, and clamped her jaw around GM's wrist. GM shouted, not from pain but from rage, and released my ankle to shake Gidget loose. Her fingers were twisting to reach Gidget's collar, but she shrieked again when the little crucifix next to Gidget's name tag touched her skin. She threw her arm back, intending to smash Gidget against the wall, but Gidget let go of her wrist just before impact and rolled away, unharmed. I grabbed the crucifix then, scrambling my way through broken glass until I reached it, and I was just about to smash GM over the head with it again when the police arrived. I'm told they had to wrestle it from my hands, but I don't remember much about that. And now, we are pretty much up to date, apart from the aftermath. I'm very tired after writing all this, so I'll give you a brief summary as I can whilst hopefully covering anything. GM is dead. Not from the blow to the head I gave her with the crucifix, but from the deterioration and damage her body had undergone whilst under the power of the entity, combined with the injuries from the broken glass. They did all they could to save her, but she was too far gone. They said it was astonishing that she'd managed to do the things she'd done in her condition. The authorities are staunchly blaming mental health, and I suppose it's a reasonable conclusion under the circumstances, but it's not the truth. I was there, and I saw the entity leave her body once the vessel was no use to it anymore. I remember that part. Nobody else saw it. I think that maybe my own mental state had heightened my abilities so much under all the stress that I was momentarily given the power. It was a blurred thing. Dark. Very dark. Some might have mistaken it for a shadow cast by the beam of the police flashlights as they shone them into the small motel room, but it twisted in the opposite direction that a shadow should have, dancing crazily as it detached, almost too fast for the human eye to perceive. Something about the movement made me sick to my very stomach, and I closed my eyes, but in the last second before I shut it out, it turned and acknowledged me. GM died a couple of days later, in a hospital bed, surrounded by friends. She never regained consciousness after the entity left her, and I'm glad of that. The torture she had been through had ended. I remained in the hospital for a couple of days. Most of my injuries were superficial cuts from the broken glass, although there was one gash that had needed several stitches, and there was a bruise around my ankle in the perfect shape of a handprint that faded after only a day. Physically, I am sore but more or less okay. Mentally, not so much. Gidget's family decided I should adopt her, and that's something I gladly accepted. The little dog and I had become close during a hard time, and I was happy to move all her things into my own home. At some point during all the commotion at the motel, she lost the little crucifix on her collar, so I'm going to get her another one, just to be safe. I know GM is gone now, but I think it's important. Gidget is in much the same condition as myself. Physically okay, mentally not so much. She has been distant and very quiet in the period since we came home. She hasn't had any cuddles and has kept very much to herself. Neither has she used her board, but I have hopes she will settle down soon. I intend to give her all the love GM gave her, and more. She will be safe with me. Update. Gidget used her board today for the first time. She asked for a treat and got her request. I think things are looking up. Update 2. I might need some advice. Does anyone know how these boards work? I've read the instruction booklet over and over, changed batteries in the buttons, etc., but they keep glitching or something. I know it's probably something in the electronics, but to be honest, I'm starting to creep me out. The buttons keep saying stuff that I'm pretty sure GM didn't record, and it doesn't even sound like her voice. Maybe she did it when she was halfway under? Update 3. One of the buttons I recorded myself has started to do the same thing. Same voice. The things they say are reasonably upsetting, and Gidget is using the board very strangely. I can't quite explain how, but she doesn't just hit the buttons. She will stand staring at me for a long time, then just when I'm getting really freaked out, she will press a button without looking at the board, watching me for my reaction the whole time. I really want to be wrong, honestly I do, but the way Gidget keeps looking at me, I keep wondering where the entity went after it left GM. Stupid, I know, but still, I think I might get some more holy water, just in case, and it might be a coincidence, but Gidget's fur looks darker somehow. Gidget more. Hello. No sad. Dark treat Gidget happy. Human happy. Animal happy. Dark inside. Dark friend. No stranger. No sad. Gidget happy. Goodbye. Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Oh my goodness. Holy crap. Okay. That's the fact that the dog made the last update is the scariest part, because like what happened to friend? What happened to Auntie X? Oh my gosh, no. That was so scary. Holy crap. Oh my gosh, Darker Gidget sponsored by Netflix. No. What is it called? What is that show called? Black Mirror? No, what was it called? Yeah, it's no. Oh my goodness, no. This needs to be an episode on that or something. I don't know what it. I don't know. Oh my goodness, amazing story. I'm glad. Oh my gosh, I'm this. Let's check who's author. I think the author was really authentic and kept withywoodwitch. I think they kept their first as withywoodwitch too. Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay, so it's withywoodwitch. So shout out to this amazing author here. But wild 9.5 out of 10 because Doggo got possessed. I feel ya on this one. Yeah, Black Mirror. Yeah, this is so good. This writer did a very good job with the creep factor. Like, yes, I kind of saw a comment slide by as I was reading, but someone, Brian, right? You wrote rather cliche, but it's executed so well, so whatever, right? Exactly. Like, we've heard about the demon possession sort of thing. Like, that's a very like normal like Halloween-y, scary story, but like the way it was executed was I think the dog upped the factor, because I think we all love and empathize with animals and we love dogs, right? And like somehow it's not as scary when it's just a human dealing with it. It's like more, I don't know, real, because it's like there's this element of a dog that we feel so attached to. Like, to be honest, I feel more attached to the doggo than I do feel the author, the writer in some ways. IDKY, I expect good endings on horror. Rain is like, I am not happy with this. 0 out of 10. 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Dog more important than stinky human. Humans, yeah. I don't know about humans, but doggo, poor doggo. No, 100% must protect doggo. Yeah, we gotta protect doggo. You must protect doggo.